Week 2 on the 4 triangles of success. So last week I went over the theoretical hierarchy of athletic development. And if you remember, that pyramid is nutrition, metabolic conditioning, gymnastics, weightlifting, and sport. This week I'm going to go over, I have my little postcards for my notes, mechanics, consistency, intensity. And so the way that pyramid works is anytime it comes to a new movement, we have technical pieces. There are right ways to do it and there's wrong ways to do it. The right ways to do it are going to keep your body safe as much as possible. And so that's what we thrive on at CrossFit Control, is focusing on this pyramid when it comes to our coaching style. And so the base of the pyramid is mechanics. And mechanics is just another name for technique. When it comes to mechanics, you have your mobility, which is the ability to create a shape. And whenever I say shape, I mean like a squat or a hinge, like a deadlift, overhead press, a lunge. There are 7 different shapes that you can create. I cannot remember them all off the top of my head, but Kelly Starrett has it in one of his books. And what we're trying to do is create good, solid mechanics, which is going to create a foundation for us as an athlete and our ability to produce these movements in the gym. And so when we look at mechanics, I'm going to use I can use the snatch and the clean for this example. So when I look at the clean and I'm looking for good, solid mechanics, I'm looking at the start position, I'm looking at the finish position. The finish position is probably going to show me what the athlete is struggling with the most. So in the finish position, what I mean by that is a full depth squat with the bar in that front rack position. And if you can get full grip on the bar, you have really good mobility. And so when I'm thinking about mechanics, I'm thinking about, is the hip crease below the top of the knee? And mechanics can be broken down for that movement. And could it be knee flexion? Can it be hip flexion? External rotation in the hip, or ankle flexion? And so all of those things, I know I'm using bigger words here, but this is what we look at on the coach's side of it. I'm looking at those mechanics and I'm trying to figure out what can I fix in that squat. So then later on, you can either add weight or increase your range of motion, because as you age, you will lose your range of motion over time. And so the more range of motion we can have now, the longer it will take for you to lose it over time. And so that's the squat piece of it. Now for the front rack position, I'm looking at, can you produce this front rack position with the elbows up, the bar is resting on the shoulders, and I still have a grip on it. And so I do have a couple of athletes where you'll watch them front squat or you'll watch them do thrusters or cleans and they stop here. That's not good. So that's telling me either they're missing elbow flexion, they have tight elbows, or they probably have tendonitis in their elbows, or they're lacking what's called external rotation in the shoulder. And so a way to think about that is if you hold your hand up and you turn your thumb out, that's considered external rotation. So if I brought my hand up, my ability to turn my hand out would be considered external rotation. And so you need that because your humerus needs to be able to rotate for you to get that hand back to the shoulder. And I need to have those mechanics down. I should be able to do it with a PVC pipe, and most people cannot do this. So this is something that we can work at over time, but I need to have those mechanics down if I'm moving a moderate load before I should consider moving heavy. So that's one piece of the mechanics side. The other piece is you have athletes that go too heavy, and then you will see bad patterns come out, and that's where like we can really thrive as coaches, is being able to improve on your mechanics. So we want to be able to get the technique down in the correct positions consistently for reps. So consistency is the middle of this pyramid. And just what I mean by consistency is I don't want every rep to be perfect, because then we should have increased the intensity. I don't want every rep to be sloppy, because then we should have reduced the load, reduced the range of motion, or reduced the actual movement itself. And so I want to be, when I think about consistency, I can use the example of Grace. Grace is 30 clean and jerks for time. And when we're looking at Grace, I want 25 out of 30 reps to look really good. Now, when I say that, grace is supposed to be under 3 minutes. So if you do 2 out of 30 good and you did it in 2 minutes, well, we should have reduced the load to make the mechanics look better. If you do 30 out of 30 reps correct, but it takes you 8 minutes to do it, you did not perform in the correct metabolic pathway, and we should have either decreased the load so you can move faster, or increase the time, and then we can see technical variances where we can actually improve your technique. So you want to have your mechanics, your technique, and you want to have it consistently for 90% of your reps, and then we can look at increasing the intensity. And again, I do like a abbreviated version of this. I mean, all of our coaches, when we run onboarding, we do an abbreviated version of this, but when we look at increasing intensity, so intensity can be increased in 4 different ways. So your power output, your work capacity is power over time. And so your work output is force times, your power output is your intensity. So you can actually define intensity as power. Power equals work over time, and work is equal to force times distance. So your power output, your intensity, is equal to force times distance over time. And so when we look at movements, once we have the mechanics down, we're doing it consistently for reps, we can either look at decreasing the time it takes us to do a certain movement or workout. We can look at increasing the distance. And so that isn't just running or rowing. That can also be your depth of squat or your range of motion on a pull-up. So you can go from a pull-up to a chest-to-bar pull-up. That would be increasing the distance that you move. You can look at increasing the amount of weight applied to it. So adding a weight vest to these movements, or increasing the load on a barbell, a dumbbell, a kettlebell, a medicine ball. And then the fourth way is to actually increase the progression. So a way to think about that is when we're doing, so like today, Coach Matt's out there, he's coaching ring muscle ups. I believe that we have 2 athletes in the gym who can do a ring muscle up. But everyone should be working towards that skill, because it is a skill that is needed throughout life. And the 2 examples I had is if you go whitewater rafting and you fall out of the boat, how do you get yourself back in? You do a muscle up to put yourself back in the boat. Same thing if you are in a pool and there's no ladder. That's how you get yourself up out of the pool. I'm sure there are other ways to do that. How you get up off the floor if you are like using a couch or an object to push yourself up off the floor. That is the muscle up skill. And so when we look at the muscle up, though, we have multiple pieces to that progression. We have, to do a muscle up, you need to be able to do multiple strict pull-ups. Before the strict pull-ups, you need to be able to do multiple kip swings. And then before the kip swings, you need to have a certain amount of ring rows to be able to support yourself. And so when we're coaching an athlete and we look at increasing the intensity, they could have, let's say they have 20 ring rows in a row with their shoulders under the rings. That's pretty difficult. Well, they need to now increase the intensity of that skill, which would be moving to the pull-up bar and attempting pull-ups. And then once they have that down, they should look at doing muscle-up transitions on the high rings. I mean, there are tons of different ways that we can go over these progressions, but with this triangle, you want to get your mechanics down. And I promise working on your mobility is going to pay off in the long run over trying to move the most weight. Get your mechanics down, do it consistently for reps, and then looking at increasing your intensity. And that will pay off in the long run for you as an athlete. So this is the mechanics, consistency, intensity pyramid. Again, if you have any questions on any of this stuff, just shoot me an email, devin@crossfitctrl.com.